Or if you go to Hobby Lobby and right now, it's like an explosion of orange, like pumpkins and fall leaves.
Orange is better than red and green.
I agree, but I'm more of like Christmas. My Christmas, I do the more of the gold, burgundy and gold than I do like
Wasn't that a song on was the old Frosty?
huh?
No, it was Rudolph. No, Silver and Gold. Silver and Gold. Yeah,
Silver
there it
and
is.
gold.
You're thinking of Neil Young. Neil Young definitely has an album and song called Silver and Gold.
Yes, but that's not where it came from.
There's actually a tie-in with Neil Young, Silver and Gold, with the point that I was thinking about in terms of integration, but I'll hold that. That's a little nugget that I'm gonna throw out there for you. I'm fired up. Let's go. What are we talking about?
You're going to set us up, Tim, but then Kim told me that, Kim, you have
a story.
You have a story. We're talking about the difficulty of bringing organizations together culturally and the heavy communications lift that it requires to get groups of different people together, even if they seem like they aren't that different. So, you want to...
Okay. So what? I thought you said Kim had a story.
And Kim,
Shall I start with
let's
that?
start with the story, Kim.
Kim, hey, so Kim, do you have a story about communications and cultural integration?
Well, I have a story that's interesting in that it's historical. It's like from 15 or 16 years ago. So this is not a new phenomenon of bringing organizations together can be difficult. So this was an organization I used to work with, and we were bringing together, there were two hospitals, aging hospital facilities, two hospitals in this basically the same town, maybe 6 miles apart, owned and operated by the same one company, right? And so we're bringing those two hospitals together into a brand new, beautiful facility. And it was wonderful. It was state of the art. It was beautiful. It was shiny. And these other hospitals had been needing to be upgraded for quite some time. And so we just thought, we're going to bring them in this nice new building. And because they're so grateful for that, it's just going to be great. Well, it wasn't. It was a very difficult, the first year at least, because what was interesting was like we just expected them to say, oh, I'm so grateful for being in this brand new facility that everything's going to be just peachy. And completely ignore that there were very different cultures at these two hospitals, even though they were just 6 miles apart. And so when we brought them together in this brand new facility, it did not go well for about a year. Well, this is how we did it there. No, that's not right, because we had better quality here, and so like we should do it this way. And there was no thought for how to bring these two organizations, two hospitals, the people from these two hospitals together in a way that worked. Completely ignored it. And so lesson learned, it took them a while. And it wasn't on the radar that this was going to be a problem. Just figured they'd be so excited about coming together that everything would be great, and it wasn't. So it's not a new phenomenon that when you bring organizations together, if you don't focus on that, it can be disastrous. And either you fail or it takes you a really long time to figure it out and puts you way behind where you thought you might be for integration. So there's just a lesson learned in knowing that this is not just a 2020 problem or 2022 problem. It is a problem that has always existed. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
And we're interested because there's a lot of integration happening. There's a lot of mergers happening, a lot of partnerships happening right now because of all the financial stuff. And so it needs to be done. There's not room to get behind.
We're talking about a lot of different things here. And so Kim, what you're describing makes a ton of sense. Why there's a need and a real burning platform for cultural integration. Two hospitals, 6 miles apart, coming together. You do want to define sort of one culture, one experience, because you're working the same building, you're working across two buildings, whatever that is. So like those sorts of partnerships, I think there's a real imperative for getting the cultural integration planning right from the beginning. I think you hear that from all sorts of CEOs who have been through it, who've said, I remember hearing years ago in Chicago, hearing Karen Teitelbaum, who was the CEO at the time of Sinai Health System, saying that not focusing on the culture was the biggest mistake they made entering a partnership, was just taking that for granted. So I think there's a ton of imperative there. What I think is more challenging, and where I might have what I may be offering is counterproductive to our business interests. But in these like large regional or national health systems, what is the reason for trying to define a culture or define a one consistent platform? Like if I'm Stewart Health and I've got 150 hospitals across 50 states.
Do you have that business? It sounds like a business plan you've got on the back
Yeah,
of it
I'm
somewhere.
pitching you a business right now. I'm gonna grab distressed hospitals across the country and mess with their licenses. No, so if you have a national or even a regional health system, you're across a couple different states, you've got a couple dozen hospitals. Why is a shared culture necessary, or even can it be pursued authentically? Because I'm not sure that it can, and I'm not sure that it needs to. You know, if you think about the imperatives that drive these larger regional national health systems, it's cost savings and being able to rationalize the sort of back end services. But if you're one hospital in Florida and your parent company also has a hospital in Iowa, like what are the things that are important that you both feel about Stewart Health, and why, beyond the self-aggrandizement of our executives, is that essential to the experience?
Maybe we think about, I think the word culture has many layers. What is the culture of our hospital? What are we as a system? How do we approach patient care as a system? What is our one mission that drives us all forward? Doesn't mean you can't have subcultures. I think we have subcultures in some way in a firm our size, and we're 77 people, and we have little subcultures within our organization, within our firm, whether it's the sort of the practice teams or, you know, the growth team or the operations team have their little subcultures, but we do have one Gerard culture. So I think you can have little tentacles or little ways of doing certain things and still be a very high functioning, well-run organization.
You're absolutely right. But you think about the work that we're doing internally right now in a firm of 70, 80 people, and we're defining like what are the things that are necessary. So that's the push I would give. I think that a lot of times our communications leaders, generally driven by their peers and executive leadership, are very focused on, we've got to define a Stewart Health experience. It's maybe, but what does that mean? Like, you got to focus on 3 things and make sure that those things are happening everywhere, or that they are like consistently in expression for your employees. But for the most part, we try to say 2 things. We try to say all healthcare is local and it's so personal and it's about your experience in your hospital and whatever, but also you need to feel a tie or feel a consistent, like McDonald's like experience from Stewart Health. And I don't think that's necessary. I don't think it does anything for the experience of healthcare.
That's interesting, because I think there are some larger entities out there, larger healthcare organizations that are trying to have a consistent brand and experience across their company. So, hey, if I walk in X facility in Florida and I walk in X facility in Iowa, it's going to feel similar.
But who cares?
I guess I wonder, is that, to your point, does that mean anything? Because how often, unless I am a snowbird and spend my winters in Florida and my summers in Michigan, why do I care? I just want to know what my local hospital feels like. So that is very interesting, because I think a lot of large organizations are trying to make this happen, trying to have this consistent sort of, if I'm this
to that
system,
point, but
right?
we make the bedrock principle something in patient experience that actually has value, that like is tied to HCAP scores or something like that. We want to strive for consistency across the system. That makes sense. It's not McDonald's has the standard so that
every hamburger tastes the same.
When I'm out of town, I go, I'm going to go to McDonald's instead of Steve's Burger Joint because I know what McDonald's tastes like. But that's not how people experience healthcare.
Yeah, that's it, because the restaurant thing is interesting, because I think of my in-laws, and they are very much they'll try local restaurants occasionally, but generally when they travel, they're about 70 and they know what they like.
Cracker Barrel.
And they'll do some Cracker Barrel, and that's it. And they are the type of people that Cracker Barrel is built for, because you know exactly, like you walk in and you know that it looks the same. You know that when you walk straight to the back.
This is going to be consistent with everything else about me, but I've never been in a Cracker.
I'll tell you, when you walk in, Tim, The men's restroom, when you go into the little hallway, it's always on the left. Women is always on the right.
You go back to and then you check in at that little table, and then you pass all kinds of goodies and things you want to buy.
Christmas stuff.
Yes, Christmas stuff.
Silver
probably
and
now.
gold.
Yeah.
But that's their thing, is like they want to go, they would rather go somewhere where they know they can get a meal that they enjoy at a price that's basically the same everywhere, rather than risk something different at.
But that's not what you're doing. You're not traveling across the country checking out hospitals.
Exactly.
Well, I wonder what this one's like.
So the idea is like, I would push people on as they think about this, what is the value of what we're trying to define as a culture that is more than a brand or more than just a logo and some bullshit platitudes. If you can drive towards, again, a handful of things that you want to have consistency in that are ideally patient or employee experience focused, then that makes sense. But it's only a handful of tent poles. It's not more than that. And you need to give people room within their local hospital or their local system to be able to make it their own within those confines. So I think about it in terms of how do we build cultural guardrails that people can still make authentic to their local community within those parameters.
Yes, I think that's a good point. I hadn't really, to be honest, thought about it this way, but what are the guardrails? What are the 5 things that make us us? And then let the rest fall out a little bit. I know before organizations decide to come together or decide to buy something over there, acquire something over there, the cultural assessment is part of that. And we even use it in our messaging is complementary missions or those sorts of things, which I think is important, by the way, because I think there's a very different culture depending on what your mission is. And so the missions have to somewhat match. If you're very overtly Christian and talk about it in all kinds of ways, if you pray before meetings, if you make that a part of how you do things, then that has to match the other person, the other organization. It has to. That's big stuff. Or if you're an investor owned, that has to be comfortable for both parties as you're coming together. Yes. But those are like the big culture things that, and I don't even know if it really fits under culture, but the mission stuff, like why are we here? And how do we go about doing what we do? I think really has to match, or that's never gonna work. And so you think about Catholic entities. That there's a lot of tension there. I worked for a very overtly Christian hospital, my first hospital that I worked in, Statues of Jesus. And it wasn't not Catholic, by the way. And we were acquired by someone that didn't have that as part of their culture or mission. And the day they acquired our hospital, luckily I was gone at the time, they basically took the statues of Jesus out of the facility, like the day they acquired, hauled them out.
Just guys with Jesus under their arms.
Yeah, exactly. Seriously, it was horrible. Like I say, I'm glad I wasn't there at the time, but that doesn't match up clearly. So if you're taking the crosses down or whatever, I mean, that obviously I would hope that you think about that.
That is a tentpole issue.
Yeah, that is a tentpole issue. Absolutely. And so you got to start there because that's never, I'm sorry, but that's just never going to match up.
Yeah.
So you got to be really careful about those kind of things.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're a Catholic health system, that's pretty easy as far as what are the unifying pieces. They're unifying both symbolic and also like operational and policy based things that are consistent. But as far as the culture goes, I think that you want to give people room to create an experience that is authentic. Nobody wants to feel on a day-to-day basis like they are part of some like big national faceless organization. What they want to feel is that they are working at their local hospital. And
it's why you see when people announce stuff on LinkedIn, they'll be like, I'm really excited to announce that I have joined the satellite overlay team on the Google Maps division. The Maps division of Google. Like nobody says, I got a job at Google. It's, I am on the team.
Right. And people don't say like, oh, I'm a nurse at big national Stewart Health. They're a nurse at their local hospital. So to whatever degree the big system or the regional system can be additive to that experience, that's great. We should definitely be informing employees about those areas where we're enabling the culture of their local hospital to grow. But I do feel like you just got to put up those tent poles. Here's my Neil Young tie-in. So the Neil Young Silver and Gold album reminded me of working at Borders. I worked at
bookstore?
Borders. Yeah, Borders Books and Music for several years, from like the end of high school or my senior year of high school, off and on through college, and then after college. I loved working at Borders. And part of what was great about
I can see Tim as the perfect, like, disinterested cashier at Borders. I know. I mean, I just, if you ever, you've never fit into a stereotype in the time I've known you, Tim, but that's it.
One of the things I would say about Borders, and this is not like, here's a lesson on why Borders crumbled because of Amazon. I don't have some like sneaky inside info on that. But I will say, before Amazon, when I started working at Borders, there was like a lot of autonomy for the employees as far as what music they played and staff selections and all of that sort of stuff. Like the stuff that you don't really think about that much if you're going to shop there, but is meaningful to the people who work there. And then over time, the corporate parent, the big Borders, because they made licensing deals on the staff picks or whatever, they would have a staff pick branded section that wasn't actually the staff picks. They prescribed what music you had to play. These were active dissatisfiers in the experience of the employees and also the experience of the store, because people don't want to go to Borders to feel like they are at a Borders. They want to go to a bookstore and have it feel a little bit like authentic to their area, even if it's some big corporate giant. We played a lot of Neil Young, Silver and Gold, so that album came out. Yeah, but then it was like, don't play Neil Young. I don't think they said don't play Neil Young anymore. But I mean, there were times where we would play death metal at 8:30 to shut down the store. And, so it's not perfect, but I do think that people benefit from the illusion that they are not part of some giant corporate machine and that they have local autonomy over their place of work, the place they receive care, that sort of thing.
I do think there's something, I totally agree. I agree with that. I agree with also something else in that we saw it during the height of the pandemic, is that there were benefits, true benefits of being part of a large organization that had access to PE, that could help these smaller hospitals figure things out. Like, here's how we're, as an organization, going to. There were very and distinct benefits to being part of a large organization during that time. Absolutely, and be sure you talk about that and let people know why that's important, because we definitely saw that.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I think the things that are real about being part of a big system should be communicated. But any attempt to define like one culture, we can't define one national culture in anything. Why would you think that you can do this in a hospital system or whatever? I think that it's only going to end with fuzzy, gauzy, nothing platitudes
fluffy,
that nobody sees themselves in.
Yes.
So the work then is to do a lot of whatever you want to call it, integration work. Like, you have to work hard at it, but also in some ways do less.
Well, I think here's our advice. I believe is, what are those tent poles? What are those things that hold up the organization? Like the 5 things, and it can't be 27 things. What are the things that make us us, that we're going to stand and we're going to plant a flag with these 5 things, and then the rest of it, let it go. Maybe hopefully you have strong CEOs, right? Strong CEOs, strong C-suites that can have local cultures, but let some things go. Let some things be local. I mean, if your hospital in Louisiana is not different from the one in Kansas, like, there's something wrong with you.
And I would say the work of the central communications team, or in a big system, or even a decent sized regional system, would be to help identify those tentpoles, help identify those 5, 10 things or whatever. And then also develop meaningful work that their local people on the ground in these hospitals can do to match those tent poles to the reality there. And so, like, how do we uncover, if our number one priority is our people or whatever, then what does that mean locally? Give our local teams the resources to uncover that, whether it's, interviews with people across the facility. How do we make that our own? And how do we give our local teams the tools to excavate that for themselves?
Very descriptive, dude.
Thank you.
Words. He likes words.
It's all that time at Borders.
Burl Ives. Good Lord, it shouldn't have taken that long. Burl Ives.
Burl Ives.
Hey, Burl Ives. Oh.
You're like, "Who the
There's the
heck is
payoff.
Burl?"
Maybe that'll go on the sound pad. Burl Ives.
Hey, good information to have about Burl Ives.